This is Tanner Campbell from the Podcasting Sucks podcast, and you're about to join Jeff Townsend, a.k.a. the Podcast Father, for his 50th episode, the 50th time he's gone on this journey to share great things and great content with creators and about creators. He has shown up for 50 episodes for you, for me, for us. Being a personal friend of Jeff's and getting a little bit of insight into his life when he's not podcasting or helping out the indie podcast community, I know how much work he has on his plate, and I know how much he sacrifices to be able to do this. He doesn't ask for thanks, he doesn't complain, he just shows up and does what he does for all of us. And so on this 50th episode, which is a big milestone, I just want to say to you, Jeff, Podcast Father, that I appreciate you. I'm glad I met you. I'm very glad we're friends. And I think this community would be far worse off without you. And I know everyone listening feels the same way. And with that, please enjoy the 50th episode of the Indie Podcaster Podcast with Jeff Townsend, a.k.a. Podcast Father.
You've been searching for a podcast. Want to know about some great artists? You've come to the right place. Indie Podcaster with your host, the Podcast Father.
So we have made it to episode number 50 of Indie Podcaster. I am Jeff Townsend. I've been trying to share amazing stories from amazing content creators throughout this journey, so it's just been awesome. I'm not sure how big of a deal number 50 really is, but nevertheless, I am truly just happy I've got to share 50 different stories that I hope helped you in some way, shape, or form. I did want to do something cool for episode number 50, and this is actually kind of crazy how this all worked out. So a while ago, Acunzo reached out to me on Twitter and just told me that he liked the work that I was doing, and he appreciated it, which was a great feeling, not only because I do really try to work hard at bringing light to the great things that independent content creators are doing, but it was also cool because I'm a huge fan of Acunzo, and I've been consuming his content for years. You know, I'm not being cheesy when I say this, but I find inspiration in it, and it's always been very helpful to me. So for him to reach out to me just kind of blew my mind, you know. I'm just so thankful for all the awesome people I've got to meet, but Jay in particular is a great one. He truly does want to support independent content creators, or just people creating things in general. In this conversation, he has a quote that I thought was incredible. He explains what his personal mission is. He said, "Help more people make what matters most." And to me, that's very powerful. And I think that's what we should all be doing. So he's got a lot of great content you should check out. You know, he's got the Unthinkable podcast and a bunch of other stuff. I don't want to waste any more time. Let's just go ahead and jump into this interview. But of course, before we do that, I'm going to take care of a few housekeeping things I like to call the business. That's right, the business. Seriously, this podcast would not exist if it wasn't for the awesome love that you guys show me in the content creator community. If you're not in contact with me and you would like to be, or you'd like to be featured on this podcast, you can go about this in a couple different ways. If you just want to chat with me, hit me up on Twitter at podcast_father. Hit up my website, podcastfather.com. There you will also find a form that you can fill out to be featured on this very podcast. If you really love what I'm doing, you know, I just would love it if you subscribe to this podcast. I'm going to share some sponsors with you. They do help me keep making this podcast, but more importantly, these are great tools that independent podcasters should be using. Podpage, you can build a beautiful podcast website literally in less than 5 minutes, guys. It's amazing. It uses your RSS feed and it automatically creates all of this. You can customize it and do all the different things you want to do. There's all sorts of different packages. You've got to have a website if you're a podcaster or a content creator. You have to. Go to podpage.com, use my code FATHER. This will get you $20 off any pro package. One of the big challenges for new podcasters is marketing your podcast. Do you need help doing that? Well, I've got the solution for you. My friends at PodSpike make marketing your podcast easy, affordable, and effective. They work with you. They pull the legwork. They connect you with all these different resources that you get to choose from. Go to podspike.com. Use the code IndiePodcaster. You'll get $20 off your first month of a pro membership. As a podcaster, it's very important to make sure you got a transcript going on for all your episodes. It really is. And my friends at Podden have the ultimate tools to do that. Make your podcast to eye-catching transcript with ease. You really need to get to it. Go to podden.io. All right, let's get into this conversation, which happens to be powered by Riverside.fm. Jay, man, I appreciate you taking the time to talk to me. I feel like we've been talking about this for several months, so it's good to finally get it going, man.
Yeah, me too. I'm excited to be here. Thanks for having me.
Hey, no problem at all. I'm trying to remember how we even first linked up. I think, and this is like a really cool thing that's happened to me over the last year. You just kind of reached out to me on Twitter and you're like, hey, I really think it's awesome what you're doing and I appreciate it.
Yeah. I put out a call a while ago. A buddy of mine runs a fairly large podcast about books and authors. And, it's for book lovers. And he and I were talking about, is there a collective of independent, like actually purely independent? Like I'm not on a network or owned by a magazine. It's like I am running the show alone or, maybe with contractors I hire. And I'd like to stay that way, or at least for now. And I'd like to support other indies and learn from them, or maybe even create some kind of badge of honor that you can emblazon on your cover art that encourages folks in the way they choose, where they buy their paper towels or clothing or groceries from. A lot of people want to know where they're buying from and what good in the world or bad in the world is happening as a result of that purchase. Could you play off of that pride that people feel and saying, look, I am a certified independent show. Your listenership really, truly matters. You're sharing the show, you're rating the show, you're buying my book. It all really adds up in keeping the show going. People feel good about that kind of stuff, I think. So he and I were swapping emails about like, what would this look like? Does it exist? So I just put out some feelers, and I got some responses that were like, okay, that's not really like you like the idea of independent, but like you're a conglomerate that owns all these shows. And then someone pointed me to you. So I do really appreciate any voice that is trying to help people that are not, big corporations try and make a living, make a life out of their creativity.
That's really cool to hear. And I always tell the listeners, like, you never know who's listening or who's watching. This is just another example, right? Like, I had no clue, but there are people out there that realize the things that people are doing, and the hard work that people put in. So it's a really cool feeling, man.
Yeah, for sure.
Obviously have you on because you're a valuable resource, to the audience, which is a lot of podcasters and content creators, but more or less you're also a good guy. So I'm excited to kind of start out and hear about how you got into all this and a little bit of your background.
Yeah, I do a lot of different projects, that's for sure. I am an independent creator, but it's coherent to me in that I know the mission that I am trying to serve and the people as a result of that mission. So my personal professional mission is I want to help more people make what matters most, whether that's to their careers or to their companies or to their communities. There's a lot of commodity work being shipped to check boxes. There's a lot of, first of all, hucksters telling you, hey, just do this or just do that or follow my simple system. But then there's also some insurgents. There's also some well-meaning, generous people who want to build the right way. They feel like their work is a place to serve others. They're not necessarily nonprofits, but they do feel like there's a cause to what they're building. They're trying to create a tool to help others do something valuable. They're trying to create education. They're trying to create entertainment or, help people feel or think or act differently or better. And a lot of folks feel like they're not really attaining that. So I want to help people make what matters. And, at first, I didn't have that clarity. At first, I was working in-house at marketing companies, in marketing teams. I worked for companies like Google and HubSpot. Briefly, I was an intern at ESPN. And tiny little startups no one's ever heard of, even a venture capital firm. And I just got profoundly disillusioned with the way most businesses run and the way most marketing happens. And so in 2016, I started a podcast called Unthinkable, which was sort of dedicated to that mission. And everything I've done since has kind of hung off that show. Newsletters and brands coming to me to make shows for them. But it all comes back to that same idea of helping people make what matters. And I like to joke with people that, part of my place in that, the percent of the solution I'm trying to bring up is I would like to, and this is like my grandest delusion. I used to say aspiration and people would look at me funny. So now I say this is my grandest delusion, is I'd like to be the Anthony Bourdain of workplace storytelling. Is I just think that style of story where you find profound meaning in the seemingly mundane of people's lives, where you help understand and connect across chasms, where you can kind of sit in your feels for a little while without it feeling cheesy and trite, this nuanced gray area type of storytelling. I don't think the workplace has enough of that. And yet we spend 90,000 hours of our lives working on average, and we find incredible meaning and we experience every emotion on the human spectrum. And yet what do we get out of business and workplace and career content? You get on one extreme, two white guys shouting about the same brands yet again. Or you get like Instagram influencer wannabes posting these like hollow self-actualization quotes to Instagram. It's like, follow your dreams. And it's okay, whatever. I think we can do better. I think we deserve better. And for my storytelling efforts, I'd like to be a percent of the solution trying to provide better.
How did you get into I'm going to just say storytelling, self-improvement marketing? But when I say that, it makes it sound like it's a phony thing.
Fine. I completely agree. I wade into waters, play on channels, and occupy a category that you might call business self-help. And there's a lot of bullshit in business self-help. And one of the things I'm trying to change is essentially that, is it's almost like you can't really change something unless you're a part of it, right? It's like you can't really just burn it all down throughout your life. If you see a problem and all you want to do is burn it down, well, eventually you have to build something back up. Otherwise, you're just living in a wasteland. And so I'd like to try and fight for something. I'd like to actually harness the inspiration from a stage or on a microphone or, all these things through courses or books or whatever it is that I'm doing in that moment. I'd like to use these things for good instead of allow hucksters and spammers and, like I said before, hollow Instagram influencer wannabes to run roughshod over the world. So I used to shy away from that, and I still kind of cringe, but I think it's fair to put me in the business self-help category.
All the terms you're just throwing out, it's kind of like saying guru, right?
Yeah, totally. Dude, even personal brand, even it's like, can we not, you know what people who have actual great personal brands don't think about is their personal brand. What do they think about? Solving a problem for their audience, being of use, helping people. Can we do that? And then what happens is a reputation emerges, right? There's only really two things. There's character, which is what you are, and there's reputation, which is what people think of you. And mostly, hopefully your character is determining your reputation, but not always. I think of personal brand as the extreme decoupling of those two, where there's a lot of people who have awful character that have such attention paid to personal brand, and it's so not who they really are. And I've seen this as a speaker and an author is I'll talk to some authors, I'll get off stage and talk to some speakers. And sometimes these people you admire behind the scenes are these ungrateful, pessimistic, self-serving assholes. And it's that's your character, yet your personal brand is so far afield of that. So, because it's this thing you're carefully cultivating. So I think I really can't stand guru, influencer, thought leader, personal brand, all that stuff. It's very simple in my mind, is figure out a problem you can't stand and go solve it. Use your creativity to go solve it. It could be as simple as the way most people talk about D&D or Marvel. I think we're missing the point, or I think it could be done better over here, right? Or it could be as grand as climate change. But pick something that frustrates you. Go investigate. Why does it frustrate you? Why does it exist? Be curious about it. And then your creative process is you trying to say to the world, hey, this sucks. This is broken. The status quo is stale or backwards. And I think I see a mountain peak in the distance, which would be better. And I'm creating this show. I'm creating this newsletter. I'm creating my body of work to try and get to the mountain peak. Please subscribe if you agree with this journey, if you'd like it to succeed. Instead of, what's my personal brand and how does it work on Twitter and how does it work on LinkedIn and all this stuff that really devolves into just a race to the bottom.
Yeah, and I think it's also what you do for the cause. Let's just use the term behind the scenes, like what we do for the cause behind the scene that, not always out there in the public image or even thinking about that a lot of the times. That's what makes it, the authenticity of it real, if that makes sense what I'm saying.
Yeah, totally. And I even think sincerity. I think words matter. And I think coming out of marketing as I have, every marketer wants to be authentic. And it's we're so excited as marketers, everybody can be authentic today. People want authentic brands, all these. It's a buzzword now. Authentic just means of undisputed origin. So you can be an asshole. And if you're showing up as an asshole in the world, that's authentic. It's not what people want, right? Same, I've heard, other speakers, I think I heard Seth Godin talk about this before, where it's if you show up for surgery and your surgeon is feeling kind of crappy today, they're not feeling it, they didn't like what they read in the news, or they're whatever, kind of tired, or something is wrong at home, you don't want that authentic self showing up. You want them to fabricate how they feel because you want the surgery to go well, right?
Yeah. I
love the idea of sincerity. And I think social media has kind of rewarded snark and rewarded sort of performative BS a lot. But can we, if we're more sincere, I don't know the answers. I could posture and pretend to be an expert here about this thing, but I actually have more questions. And that's what my show is about. And that's what my newsletter is about. And instead what you get, especially in my category of business, is people who are insincere, saying, just do this or follow my system. And sometimes they get so far into that themselves that they've now convinced themselves that, actually that's reality. That's correct. That they can solve all your problems with one simple system. And so sincerity, I think, goes a long way. And unfortunately, I think a lot of these technologies are squeezing out the desire to be sincere. And for all of his snark and sarcasm, Bourdain did that insanely well, where his sincere moments, sometimes through the snark, sometimes through meaningful emotional moments, it's shown through. It brought you closer to him and to the themes he was trying to help you understand.
You have probably heard of promo swaps with other podcasters, but have you heard of feed drops? Feed drops are when one podcaster plays an entire episode of another podcast. The idea is for the listeners of the show to experience an entire episode before they decide if they want to subscribe. I'm going to tell you what, this is way more effective than promo swaps, and I have the perfect person that can do this for you, my good friend Greg at Indie Drop-In Network. Indie Drop-In Network is a network built around feed drops. You submit an episode, and if approved, it appears on one of Indie Drop-In's shows with all your contact details in front of established audience. Best of all, it's free. So, if you are a true crime, paranormal, scary, or comedy podcaster looking to find new listeners, consider doing this. I've done it, and I can tell you it does work. What the hell are you waiting for? I should probably tell you how to do it. Maybe that's what you're waiting for. Go to indiedropin.com/creators. I'll say it again. Go to indiedropin.com/creators. You're damn right. Dang, that felt good. So I do want to kind of touch up on a lot of this branding stuff here in a minute, but I do want to backtrack and just, how did you get into all this? Obviously, you went to school and all that, and then you're interned at ESPN and a few other things here between there and there. But like, what was your passion to get into something like this? Because it's kind of like a weird thing to get into, because I haven't met a whole lot of people that are like, oh, my parent did that, right? Like, I was in marketing up until like very recently, and I can't say, well, I know very many people who were really doing that full time growing up. So it's kind of like a rare breed of a thing.
Yeah, my mom is a preschool teacher, has been for more than 2 decades. My dad's a software engineer, used to be in-house, corporate side. Now he's been an entrepreneur for multiple decades as well. So my mom is extremely creative and unorganized, and my dad is incredibly organized and methodical and logical. And I kind of have both of those in my brain. So I found my way into, at first it was sales. I graduated from school and I wanted to be a sports journalist, and I went to school for English literature, loved to write, love to create, always have. But when I graduated from school, I thought maybe I'll go work for a newspaper. But it was 2008. So the economy was in an extreme downturn and print papers were closing or not hiring. I thought I had a job lined up at ESPN. They too had stopped hiring junior level employees at that time. And I was kind of thrashing for a summer, and I found my way to Google into this like weird digital media strategist role, they called it. But essentially I was advising brands and their agencies how to advertise on Google search and through banner ads and on YouTube and all these things. And I kind of woke up one day, and it wasn't one day, but over the course of 3 years, I just got unhappier and unhappier because I realized I was sold a script and it wasn't mine. I was sold a script in school that if you get the straight A's and join the clubs and play on the teams, then you become the presidents and the captains and all these things, the things I was doing. Then you go work for the most famous company you can possibly get a job at. You stay there forever. You're a success. And I had been fulfilling that script up until I got that job at Google, and I was miserable at that company. It was supposed to be where you were like destined for greatness and everyone loved it. And you could literally go to almost any country that had an internet connection and say where you worked, and people go, oh, that's cool. Like, I thought if I had worked there, I would have made it. And I was miserable. Why? Well, because that's not my script. Like, I like when the parts and pieces of a business are on the floor and you're trying to build the machine. I didn't like being this tiny, tiny, tiny little cog in a bigger machine. And my job was to just turn the wheel faster than the other guy. I like making things. I wasn't making things. I was advising people who were building businesses or making ads or whatever. The corporation that I worked for wasn't the issue. It was my fit in it. And my fit in it was a result of me pursuing what was a generalized version of the success script. And so 3 years in, I decided it's fine. I got to quit. I can't stand the work. I can't stand the results of this work, like interruptive advertising. I'm out. And I got into this tiny startup that had a role, director of content. And it was like, I've never heard that word before, but I know editorial. I know how to write. I like that kind of stuff. And I kind of do like the business world. So let me join this startup. I'll be director of content. And I wouldn't say it was all roses, but I liked it much better. I got to write articles, create ebooks, that kind of stuff, and simultaneously built a community of folks with content in their title in my hometown of Boston, because we were all figuring out that career path. We were all like misfits from different fields, being tasked with being on the marketing team and creating content. And none of us knew what to expect from the career, but we're like, something is here. So I built this community of content creators. And I would say those two things, the job and the community on the side, pointed me in the direction that you see me in now, which is creative people who are trying to make things that make a difference for others through the lens of business, through the lens of building a company or an audience, projects that spark change or require, building an audience or community. So it is a little bit odd if you just leap to where I'm at now. But if you paint a picture, it kind of, in retrospect, all kind of makes sense because it just, like anybody's work, it just kind of builds each step of the way.
It's crazy. And it's funny to me because you talk about the journalism piece of it and the sports. And a lot of times, like I went to school for business management. So like, I feel like a lot of us end up in this marketing when we get out of school because there's like a million different paths where you can go into it with all sorts of different degrees, just really depending on what jobs opening, what internships you've done, et cetera. You can get into that from a million different directions. So often, I do not ever hear people hardly say like, hey, my degree is actually in marketing. So you're just like another example of how, we can all get into it from different areas. So no, that's awesome.
Yeah, I like to say, like, I joke that I got a BA and BS because I got an English literature degree. But in reality, like, I learned critical analysis. I learned arguments. I learned how to write like crazy. I learned how to have almost no time to do something insane, like read this giant dry book in this very short amount of time and write something meaningful about it. Like I basically learned these meta skills that are serving me now today. So I think like, especially we see this in the tech world, we need more liberal arts. We need that lens of critical thinking and editorial discernment and a real sensitivity to the world. Like not sensitive like I see a flower wilting and I weep, but sensitivity like I can sense when something feels off and I will speak up about it versus what a lot of people do is go, I guess this is how this business runs. Like, I guess this is how all of business runs. Okay. Or like, I really hate this, but everyone else seems okay with it, so I won't say anything. Like it's a profound service to provide as a communicator. If you point your audience to a problem they didn't see before or they felt but didn't have language for, because then they have this wonderful reaction, which is, oh my God, I feel seen. And that's what all humans want. And a friend of mine likes to joke, if you don't believe me, just go listen to somebody asking a question after a speaker finishes at an event. Give someone a microphone at the Q&A portion. If you don't believe people just want to feel seen. That's in many ways my role, is being firm in my belief system about what creativity can do and what content can do for good in this world and helping other people feel seen, because either they're not empowered to say that to their boss or their clients, or they've felt it for years, but don't have the language to put to it and don't have a community to rally around them.
Often when we get out of school and we have this several year period where a lot of us go through all these different jobs before we find something that we generally that we like, right? You talked about like Google and all that, but you had to learn a hell of a lot too, though, that kind of helped you become the person that you are today, even if you didn't enjoy the work.
Yeah, definitely. I like to joke that I'm a big, like millions of people, I'm really into the, Marvel movies and Marvel Cinematic Universe, and it's great escapism. And I love, the way they build on each other, all the characters. I often use the analogy that I feel like I and lots of people like me were the Winter Soldier. Now, for those who don't know, the Winter Soldier was just Captain America's friend. He had no superpowers. He was just a guy. And he got abducted by the bad guys, given super soldier serum, and was experimented on. And they also gave him a metal arm. So he became a super villain until he was unbrainwashed and returned to the good side. So now he's a superhero. Why is he a superhero? It's because he was abducted by the bad guys. Now, I don't think corporations and marketers and anything for profit, and I'm not afraid of capitalism, and I want to recalibrate capitalism, but I don't think capitalism itself is the problem. I think it's the way humans approach it. And so anyway, I think I wouldn't say I was abducted by the bad guys, but I will say that being in sales and having to sell is a lifelong skill. Being in marketing and understanding how to market is a lifelong skill and a transferable skill. And so you wouldn't be talking to me today if I didn't work for those companies. Not because, maybe 1% because you look at my bio and you go, oh, I recognize that brand. He must be worth talking to because someone else vetted him. This is the reason we do this. Someone else vetted him. He went to this fancy school. He worked for this fancy brand. So that's a shortcut to me not having to vet them as hard. And I will then, and this is why, privileged people, it just compounds because they have those logos from a young age, right? So I don't think it's that. I think it's that I worked in an area that creative people often don't want to tolerate or even think about. They run kicking and screaming from the idea of sales or marketing. And what I'm trying to do is sit in the middle And to the folks that only think of sales and conversions and marketing and ROI, I'm trying to say, and here's why your goals are better met if you think generously about creativity and craft and serving your audience. And then to the creative people, I'm saying, and here's why your ideas will hit home harder, will have more of an impact, and the world will get better if you understand sales and marketing and business building, right? So I've kind of played this translator role in the middle, and it's completely, to your point, it wasn't my choice. Like, I didn't love the idea of sales. I didn't love the idea of marketing. But now that I'm doing the independent creator thing, it's like, how can I use these things to help more people?
Yeah, that's fascinating. We're like a couple years away from 2016 here. So you talked about this startup that gave you a lot of the other skills that you went into before you started this podcast. Getting out of the corporate world and kind of getting to that smaller level. And
I felt like I mattered a little bit more. I mean, that again, like, I want to help people make what matters. I talked about feeling seen or helping your audience feel seen. And that's why I think you could put me in the business self-help category, because I speak about people. I don't speak about logos and the machinations of logos. It's all about people at the end of the day. And you understand people, you understand marketing. And so, or business overall. And so at that tiny startup, as director of content, I could swivel my chair and talk to the CTO and solve a problem. And I know it sounds kind of trite and almost obvious, but having only worked for Google for 3 years, having no other corporate jobs in my experience, I was all newspapers before that or ESPN. It was bizarre to me that, like, I could talk to the CTO next to me versus Google. Like, good luck, you couldn't get a meeting with the fifth layer below the CTO because they were in a different department and more senior than you, let alone talk directly to the head of technology. At the startup, I could. So I felt like I mattered. I felt like my ideas could actually have an impact on the business, then the customers, then became the community group that I was building. I started launching a lot of side blogs. I'd always had a side blog. I'd always had a project on the side to allow me to write first about sports, then about business. And that always did come and pay dividends eventually in some indirect way. Well, now it was becoming more direct because now I was in the world that I wanted to be in: creativity, brand building, innovation, startups. And I was helping other people with my own content that I bylined or was under my website. And I would get things like speaking gigs for free at somebody's, fun drink meetup. But it gave me the practice I needed to turn free speaking gigs into paid keynotes down the road. And the community helped me meet people at other brands. So I learned about all these cool companies, and that led to clients down the road who would hire me to make podcasts for them or make documentaries for them, which is a big part of my business today. So that startup experience, although the business is something no one's ever heard of, and eventually it just closed shop. I think it got like acqui-hired somewhere. They kind of parked the business at an agency and it just kind of went nowhere. It's not Google, right? The success script that were mostly sold in school would say, don't work at that company. But working at that company helped me as a person, emotionally, in terms of my craft, in terms of my network. I mean, all these things got better because it fit my script, not someone else's.
Yeah. And I think, like, long story short, it's like you're in a situation where you felt like, and you actually could make a difference.
Yeah. And look, when I'm on these podcasts, I get passionate about this stuff, and because I do find a lot of meaning in my work. I feel like there's somewhat of a vocational aspect to the stuff I like to create and who I like to serve and the problems I want to help solve. But at the end of the day, I am profoundly privileged, right? Like, I worked for Google as a culmination of my entire life before that, having doors open for me. I mean, when I was born a straight white male to two loving parents in the Northeast of the United States, in an upper middle class household. And those parents basically said to me, this is the door. It's labeled opportunity. It's already ajar for you. By the way, we're here every step of the way to show you how to push that door and to encourage you to do that. Some people are born, that door is locked shut. Some people are born, that door is locked shut and it has a moat full of sharks in front of them. I mean, you can't really control the circumstances of your birth. So what I don't want to do is have anybody listening be like, it's easy for you to say, Jay, I got profoundly lucky. But what I hope to do with that luck is help others along the way. It's like I've been helped by a lot of mentors. And I feel like I've heard people say this quite often in different ways. Like, if you make it up the ladder, send it back down for others. Don't pull it up behind you, or even make it easier, build some stairs. And I do feel that way. I feel like if you are privileged enough to create for a living, I mean, my God, like, how many people want to do that? Others want that too. Show them how. Give them the opportunity, offer apprenticeships. That's something I've done. If you can't afford to pay somebody, start with apprenticeships and then hire freelancers as you grow. Like, we as independents, because I know that's a lot of the audience listening, we have to help each other because the deck is stacked against us, both to create for a living anywhere, in-house or independent, and also to grow and stand out. But I think, together we can kind of raise or increase the signal of the web and not let those hucksters and self-serving, spammers win. So yeah, I just wanted to throw out that giant caveat because I don't want people to sit here and think, I'm not trying to say I'm down the path and you can too, because that would be ignoring the privilege that I have.
Right. It's important to acknowledge that. But there's also people that the door is wide open for them and everything is there, but they just don't go for it for whatever million different reasons.
Right. And that's a big problem I'm trying to solve too. Yep, definitely.
You got to help create opportunities there for everybody, but some people just are also in a position where they just don't take it. Anyways, man, so 2016 was like a pretty damn good year to get into podcasting. A lot was going on. Talk to us about that and then how you actually and why you started Unthinkable.
So my first show was actually 2 shows before that. It was 2015, might have been the end of 2014. I was working as what they call a head of platform. It's basically content, brand, and community initiatives for a venture capital firm, a tech firm that invests in seed stage, so really early stage startups. And I loved the job, loved the team. It was the only job I ever left where I still liked it when I left, but I wanted to pursue my speaking business and my personal show. But at the time I had no shows, had never built a podcast, always wanted to. I was a big Radiolab fan and Bill Simmons fan and comedy fan and all this. And a friend of mine was running a nonprofit in Boston and he said, I'd love to talk to you about content strategy, Jay. Like, what should we be publishing as a nonprofit to grow our audience and influence around Boston? And I said, here's some options. Here's some ideas. Oh, by the way, I think you should launch a podcast. And he goes, oh, really? And I was like, yeah. And here's the thing. I think I should host it. And he's like, have you ever hosted a podcast before? And I was like, here's the other thing. No. And so he, being a nonprofit, they're not going to pay a big agency and they appreciate the free help. So I volunteered to make this nonprofit show. And essentially what I did was imitate my heroes. Like, I did some narration, I did some music, I did some sound design, and it was crude at best. But because it was in the space it was in, tech and business, and because that space was saturated even at the time, but pretty one note, the show got a little bit of acclaim in Boston. And I learned a lot, but if you listen to it, I sound profoundly bored on the microphone. I didn't know what I was doing. My friend left the nonprofit, so 3 episodes into the show, it died. And I thought, I'm hooked. I have the bug. I want to do this more. I love this idea of shows. It takes my writing skill, my core ability, and it translates it to something new. I love that. And so I pitched my firm on letting me do a show for a VC. And everybody and their mom in venture capital had a show at the time, even in 2015. We were very late. Isn't that funny? 2015, it's like we're late. You're still not late now. So everyone did the same thing, talking topics with experts, right? So we're going to bring on the biggest founder we can reach. We're going to bring on the biggest investor and the tech journalist, and we're generically going to talk to very smart people. And I said, all right, well, we are not a generic firm. We specifically focus on very early stage companies in tech. That is our superpower. That is what we want to attract to our brand. We're going to call the show Traction. We're only going to focus on 0 to 1 steps. So how did you raise your first dollar? How did you win your first customer? It was clever and creative ways that startups start. Because you always hear these funny stories. It's like you had no resources, but you had to do it this way to start. And the show got some press because of that, because everyone was doing it the same way and we did not. And the thing is, our attempt to be different didn't come from some gimmick that we were grabbing at to stand out. It came from the fact that we were trying to build a very specific brand. We had a specific message, which I think is what plagues most companies, most individuals too, who are trying to stand out. It's don't invent something that you think is white space or will grab attention. Genuinely interrogate the problems you're trying to solve in the world and figure out your unique point of view on that and let that lead. Lead with your beliefs, how you explore stuff, why you explore it, not what you explore, because what you explore is profoundly commoditized. And so that show helped me get the confidence that I could do this professionally, that I could create my own side project show, which is the one I still host today, Unthinkable, which is a narrative show to inspire creativity in our work. And that show led to all the other things, like I said, eventually over time, clients coming my way and speaking opportunities and my first book and all those things. So that is the long answer to how I got into podcasting and how it kind of grew from there.
I'm really proud to be an indie podcaster, but I do know one of the things that I have the most difficult time keeping up with is editing this very podcast. It kicks my butt every week. But I will tell you, I did find a solution to this and a team that I can trust to edit my podcast. The team at How's It Podcasting. I met these guys online, and I'm not going to lie, I was a little skeptical at first, right? Like, this is my baby. And for me to trust somebody else with it was a really big deal. I did give them a shot, and I've just been so satisfied with the results. They understand that you don't have the most amount of money to spend. They have very affordable options to edit your podcast. I do think it'll help you keep your podcast going longer and help you maintain that level of creativity that you're needing, because that needs to be your main focus, is actually creating the content. I want you to reach out to them and give them a shot. How's It Podcasting. So it's HOWZIT Podcasting. On Twitter, you can find them at How's It WP. Same with Instagram, How's It WP. And on Facebook, look up How's It Podcasting. Their email is howsitwp@gmail.com. This will all be in the show notes, no worry. But if you really want to spend that time focusing on the content you're creating and not just spending hours and hours beyond hours editing, I highly encourage you to check out How's It Podcast Editing. I love the podcast, man. I think that it's...
Thank you.
And I'm a big fan of everything you do. I think it's a great inspirational source for people in the business world, but also individually. And let me talk about this series. And you know that I like this series because I suggest it to people all the time on social media. The Maker Monsters.
Thanks.
I just want you to talk about some of that. And there's a big difference, like why people create content, like for business or just personal. This podcast, The Unthinkable, can be used for personal and business sort of motivation. It does for me, at least.
Yeah, I'm glad to hear that that's hitting home for you, because I think it's the same thing. I speak to one person with my newsletter. I speak to one person with my podcast, because when you're consuming either, you're one person. Like when YouTubers say, hey guys, I get they're trying to convey there's a community around YouTube or whatever, or, hey everyone to start a newsletter. Like when I get that, I'm thinking like, you say, hey guys, to open an episode, and I'm listening alone. Not you, but like in general, the general you might say, hey guys, to start a podcast episode. And I'm looking around, I'm like, where are all the guys? It's just me here. Like, what's going on? So I'm speaking to one person. So you can't help someone's business unless you help the person. And I'm also a believer that everybody's handing out instructions and directions. Here's the system to build your business. Do it this way. Well, you know what's more valuable to people and teams than follow these directions is giving them a compass and teaching them how to be great navigators instead of great direction followers. Because as soon as the directions don't make sense, like there's a tree down in your path and you hit an obstacle, and you will, those directions are useless. Or handing you a map and saying, this is the map of how to build a software company and here's all the stuff to know. Well, the terrain is going to change, so the map is rendered useless. But the thing that has the most value is understanding how to get your true north, get your bearings, and find your own way, right? To believe in yourself, to understand how to hone your skills and ask the right questions and be an investigator instead of an expert, because experts have the answers. But that has a limited shelf life. It's also everywhere. It's not that special. The how-tos, that's everywhere. People don't need more how-tos. People need how to think. People need how to see. People need how to invest in their own abilities and question the status quo. We need to be navigators and investigators, much more so than direction followers and experts. And so that's what I want to do with the show. And the Maker Monsters thing was our attempt to say, but standing in our way of doing that are a lot of barriers, and almost all of them are internal. Right? It's less my boss, my team, my resources, my time. It's definitely not access to information or an expertise, because again, that's everywhere for free. It's mostly, I feel I don't belong. I have imposter syndrome. I'm worried I'm not different enough. I chase shiny objects. So there's all these issues that are inside our own minds and are still just as real and even more troubling, I would argue, than something that's quote unquote more tangible out in the world, like how many resources you have to work with, that people don't really address. Or if they address it, it's kind of fluffy. And so we thought, well, we are an independent show. So it's me and a producer, a freelance producer. And we thought we'd love to do this like chorus of voices and create like the ultimate I Feel Seen series for creative people. And so we picked a theme each episode. And so we did 3 of these where we sent a bunch of people in our network from all different creative walks of life a series of questions. And we said, just send us voice memos, or if you are a podcaster and have this set up, send us a recording of you answering these questions. And we got like really, really specific to make sure it wasn't, too general. Like we were asking for stories, and almost like in lieu of following up with them live, we wanted to handhold them through the questionnaire And we got these amazing stories, these amazing responses. And even people saying like, I'd never considered I should call this a maker monster because that almost externalizes the internal and makes me realize this is a solvable problem. Like even that right there, that broad generality helped people feel seen. And then you dive into whatever it is, imposter syndrome or fear of not standing out or whatever. And so we did that series using a chorus of voices, addressing all these hard questions. We'd then pick a theme for one episode of the 3 episodes and dive down deeper to follow like 2 or 3 individuals as kind of the spine of the episodes. And it was a lot of fun to create. And it was even more fun to see the reactions of people going like, oh my God, like get out of my head. And I mean, that's the goal. It's like, that's what you want out of creative work is people feel it's so resonant to their own life experience that they throw up their hands and they're like, yes, this, or, oh my gosh, you're speaking my language. Or, again, I feel seen.
Yeah. The first step is overcoming yourself. And it's really that way with most things in life, right? So it's a hit home series of me. It's a great thing. Highly encourage everybody to listen to it.
Thank you.
Like we touched up on earlier, and like you're aware, a lot of people listen to this are, let's just say, indie podcasters. I've pushed that term to the sky, man. People are probably sick of me saying it. Somebody said to me a few weeks ago, can you quit saying effing indie podcasters? I'm like, well, it's kind of like a way of life almost, right? It sounds cheesy when I say that, but it's more than just podcasting. It's in general. And you talked about that earlier, like when you were referencing business, like supporting local independent things. There's like I just said, I'll say it again. It's a lifestyle more than just anything else to me. So
sure. Yeah. I mean, it's part of my sneaky ambition is to increase the signal of the web. Because I think there's a lot of people doing very meaningful work and they're unwilling to play so far into all these algorithms that reward extremism and reward basic stuff. Like it's essentially a system built to reward extreme good, extreme pithy, extreme stances on everything. And it's very explainable. 100% of this is very explainable. It's the advertising business model. Like if you want to understand a media company, if you want to understand a social media company, so traditional or social media, just understand how they make money. It's that simple. They make money on ads and programmatic at that. So it's not contextual to what content is posted. We'll run a similar, like this guy talks about cars. So here's some automaker ads alongside of it. There's no real problem with that. You even see this being combated in search. Google used to run contextual ads on search. The keyword you search determines what ad shows up because all the content's about X. So the ads are also about X. But now there's tracking. Now they're following you around the web. Now there's, automation and personalized things. Programmatic advertising. It is one of the biggest ills of our society because it's what has driven us apart. All the other things we talk about that are like systemic problems. The kernel of it is how are these companies making money? So with independence, those models don't work for us because we don't want to wade into those extreme waters and take a well-reasoned, nuanced view of the world and make it extreme and pithy. But also, the math doesn't work. CPM makes no sense at all if you have 500 downloads on your show. By the way, 500 of the right people is an incredible feat. Imagine walking to an event every week down the street from your house to deliver a keynote address to 500 people. You would do that in a heartbeat. But because it's digital, we feel bad. Oh, I only have 100 people. I only have 50 people. It's like it needs to be 5,000. I wish it was 25,000. Because we see these insane numbers, forgetting to look under the hood at who these people actually are. So I just want to empower more people that have the right intent, I would say, to create more meaningful work and focus on the right things, not dilute their message in chase of reach, but actually care about resonance and learn how to resonate because I think it's learnable. I think it's a craft. And so, we've talked a lot about Unthinkable. That's what the show's become about is like, how does work manage to resonate with us? And how can we learn from the work that does, that creates passion, not total reach, but passionate fans? How do we learn to do that in our work too? Right? Because that protects us against needing to be constantly bigger, constantly more, constantly more awareness. Our work as indies is about not awareness, but about affinity. And so I think we should just get good at that. And by the way, brands should too, because brands run around thinking about, oh, we need more awareness in our marketing. That's a very dangerous assumption because what's implied is if only more people were aware of us, they would love us. And that's a very dangerous thing to think. Better to focus on doing things people would actually love and let the awareness take care of itself through word of mouth. So yeah, I'd like to be an arms dealer for more independent creators.
And I think you are, man. You said something awesome with the 500 people thing, and I've heard that before. And I love it because if you close your eyes and you picture a room full of 500 people all watching you, that's pretty powerful and actually kind of intimidating when you think about it.
How many have actually done that in the real world? You'd be intimidated, right? And you're saying you get that on your show? That's incredible.
Yeah, no, that's a great analogy. That's because just picturing it, I'm sure a lot of people listening to this haven't. And when you think about that, that is incredible, man.
Well, but here's the scary part though, Jeff. Like the thing we have to call out. The thing we have to call out is it's scary to think that way sometimes because it's easy to go, oh, well, not a lot of people know about the show. And if I could grow it, growing it sounds like putting links everywhere or buying ads or doing all these things where I'm kind of removed from the work and I'm kind of like shirking the responsibility. Like the onus is on me, but not as much as if I said to you, those 500 people, they're listening to a show. You're saying you have whatever, a 30-minute or hour-long episode once a week. Are you hearing from them? Are they taking action with you? Are they actually like going above and beyond to support you? Because like the theory of the show is that people will connect with you more deeply. So it's kind of a relationship accelerant compared to other forms of content, other forms of media and marketing. So, but that means you have to put yourself all the way on the hook to say, if I'm not going to chase reach, if I'm not going to run around diluting my message, being an extremist, trying to get more, then the other end of the spectrum is I am on the hook to not blame the algorithm, to not blame the discoverability, but to say, I reach 100 people. Those 100 people have to really love this. I need a stronger relationship with these people. How do I do that? And there's no cheat or hack or technology to either buy or blame. That's on you creating a better experience and serving your audience better. And that is scarier. But if we can get past that maker monster, I think it's also much more attainable than people realize. It's just that oftentimes we're focused on the wrong things because we're trained by the distant echoes of mass media marketing and mass media companies. And that's the mentality we have to escape.
Yeah, it's not something that you can half-ass. And it's certainly something that if you're not careful, like you talked about the echo and all that, that's kind of stuff can really start to eat you alive if you're not careful. So you have to focus on the mission at hand, I'll say.
Right. And most people getting clarity around that is the battle. I had a great phone call with a buddy earlier today. He runs a community group for marketers who, like me, just want to make good content. They believe good marketing equals good content, not over marketing or over promoting crappy stuff. That's their belief system. I love it. I align with it. And we were talking about how he's got 500 members in this group, to use the same number. And he was thinking like, what's the road to 1,000? And I said, well, what you should be thinking about is these 500 members pay you $10 a month to be a part of your group. What type of value would you need to provide them so that they pay you $1,000 a month or even just $25 a month up from 10? It's like, how do you go deeper with an audience that already knows, likes, and trusts you? Because if you can do that, two great things happen. And I'll use the most corporate language I can. Let's talk about LTV and CAC, CAC. So the lifetime value, LTV, of your audience goes up the more you serve them, the deeper you serve them. So again, corporate capitalistic language here, the lifetime value of any one subscriber goes up. Why? Because they're buying more, they're spending more time with you, they're giving you feedback, they're responding to your surveys, they're sharing your stuff on Twitter, all of it. Each individual is more valuable. And then CAC, customer acquisition cost, that's again another corporate term. That goes down because those happy, loyal, passionate fans refer you to their friends. So they bring you new people for free. That's how it should work. I told him, I was like, you have 500 people, go deeper with them. In marketing parlance, increase their lifetime value. In human parlance, develop a stronger relationship with them, right? Like offer them more things that sure they have to purchase or might have to participate in, but go deeper with them because you have 500 people. If they can't get you 505, 515, 550, then you're doing something wrong, right? Your bucket is leaky. Why are you trying to pour more people into the bucket? And on the other end of the spectrum, you have the people that are like, I don't know who these people are. I just need the number because I'm going to flip the number to an advertiser for a set dollar amount. Well, you are exposed, my friend, because you're now a commodity to the advertiser. They don't really care about you, not the way your listeners do. You have this weird value triangle between you, your audience, and the advertiser. It's a far sturdier business model if you provide more value to your audience and go direct to them than if you're always trying to sort of arbitrage an opportunity. You're always trying to say like, I got to build bigger and flip to this advertiser for more money. And it's a rickety business model, which we're seeing show up in, again, the places we're learning from, mass media and big business marketing. It's crumbling. And so that to me is a better path for indies, is go deeper, not broader.
Kind of getting a little bit towards the end here, but I think it's important to utilize the time that I have with you in regards to the audience. What are a few examples that you could think of for this advice that you've been given the last 30 minutes? What are a few good examples, if you could pick a few that you'd really want people to take home from listening to this?
I love what Marie Poulin is doing. So Marie is an independent creator as well. She doesn't have a podcast. She has a YouTube channel. Marie is most famous for kind of being the world's foremost leader in productivity through the platform of Notion. So the software app Notion. She has a course called Notion Mastery. She has some side kind of tangents to the course that look more like live office hours and live hot seats and coaching. She has built a multi-million-dollar business with a small team around her, working full or half time with her, basically by going deeper into one idea, one belief system, one focus, and one audience, one core audience. And each individual that encounters her, and sure, she has passersby who come in, buy the course, and leave her ecosystem. But mostly she's got these rabid fans who they consume her content, they take the course, they opt in for the office hours, etc. Anything tangentially related. Marie's talking now about she has ADHD. Is there something about Notion for ADHD? Well, how is she figuring this out? She's going to her audience and she's surveying them. She's asking them questions and they are responding, not just by filling out the survey, which is a challenge for folks with audience in general. Please answer this survey. Sometimes people just don't even listen, don't respond. Hers respond. They're also going out of their way to say, oh my God, I feel seen. Oh my gosh, yes, this. And here's a bunch of ideas. Here's paragraphs, Marie, via email that you didn't ask for in the form. That's part of the power of having a passionate, specific audience that you resonate with, to say nothing of reach. This higher lifetime value. They're informing her next product. So Marie is able to build this tiny little empire that funds her life, and then some, other people's as well, by going really deep with a very specific audience versus trying to grab it more and more and more. So she's a wonderful example. Another person I'd point to is a guy by the name of Jay Klaus. So Jay hosts a wonderful podcast called Creative Elements. Great interviewer. Ask things you wish you were asking. You hear a lot of these same people that he interviews, like James Clear and Tim Urban and Vanessa Van Edwards. These people are sort of everywhere digitally, and you hear them interviewed a lot, but not like you're going to hear them on Jay's show. And Jay talks about how they're turning their creative passion into careers and businesses. But he asks really great questions. So anyway, Jay has a very passionate audience, and he's picking up on all the problems, almost like a software product manager developing a new feature for a software platform. A product manager is really good at fleshing out what is broken in your world. Where is the pain? How are you already trying to solve that pain? Don't tell me what you want me to build, because I have a better imagination and knowledge of the craft than you do. I don't want your ideas. I want your problems. Give me all your problems. Give me how you're trying to solve those problems. I'm going to come with something that you haven't thought about, that you would never have proposed. And so that's what Jay's doing. Jay's developed a Twitter community. He's developed a Twitter hashtag community, not the new feature communities. He's developed a community that has accountability sprints. He is taking the same audience and basically systematically stamping out more and more problems, adding more and more value along the way, such that if he wanted to, just like Marie, he could turn off the marketing. He could go completely private. And as long as he's communicating via email behind the scenes, via his RSS feed on the podcast, he could just turn off every social network and find more and more ways to go deeper with that audience, and he would be fine financially. That is impressive. That is hopeful to me as an independent.
You said hashtag, right? We'll say indie podcast hashtag. It's not about the damn hashtag. It's about the value that you are supplying your audience, your customers, however you want to look at it, right? Because there is a business approach and a non-business approach.
Yeah. What breaks my heart, and specifically with indie podcasters so often, is we think about production value, and what we're thinking about actually is production. We forget the value. We think production value is, I'm going to have an amazing soundproof studio in my home. I'm going to have an incredible camera, amazing lights, the best possible microphone, and then I'm going to debate with others the best setup technically. And I'm going to ask questions of others about what mic do you use? And I'm looking for this thing. And I need this high fancy technology to compress the audio, whatever. Well, you probably should have reinvested all that time and energy into is developing the premise of your show, because you look and sound like everybody else, or your interview craft. Or go and spend half of that time even having one-on-one phone calls or video chats with your audience to learn about what they want to see from you or what they're struggling with, what they love, what they don't love, where they're underserved, how you can serve them better. Because that puts the value in production value. Quite literally, it's not about the tech. Production value means the value of the production to someone else. And all we're doing as podcasters is we're getting really excited to look fancy. And the analogy I always use is I grew up playing basketball, and you'd go play pickup in the park. And you'd see this guy walk up, and he'd have an arm sleeve and compression shorts and the latest LeBrons and a headband. This guy would look like a player. And a funny thing would happen when you start the game is the guy couldn't play. It's like, but playing the game is what basketball is, right? We're trying to look the part. I think we need to act the part, right? We're trying to talk about it. I think we need to be about it.
I do want to give you a few minutes to talk about all the other great things that you're doing and where people can find your stuff.
Thank you. I really appreciate that. If you just go to jacunzo.com, you'll find it all. But the most important thing is just go make something. Like stop, don't hide by consuming more of my content because you're like, oh, Jay will inspire me to create. I hope I can. But the most important thing is that you just go get to work, is that you use the momentum you're currently feeling, not to funnel it towards my platform, but to go funnel it towards yours. That's far more productive because that's what this work is. It's practice. It's not finding the answer to justify acting. It's acting to find your answers. So go act. If you want to find me, everyone knows how to internet. It's super easy to find me, but create something. Like take the energy you might be feeling, and I hope you're feeling now, and put it towards the practice because that's all this stuff is. Thanks, Jeff. Yeah, I truly love helping people. So if you see me on Twitter or anywhere else, reach out.
Thanks for listening and thanks for telling a friend. But more importantly, thank you for supporting independent content creators. I hope you enjoyed this episode and continue to listen to the upcoming ones. I'm really trying to do something special here by highlighting all the amazing things all these amazing content creators are doing. I hope you continue to join me on my journey. I'm Jeff, aka Podcast Father, the Indie Podcaster. Keep being you, keep being great.